how Traoré made Burkina Faso Africa's most affordable nation. There are moments when a nation stops waiting for permission and begins writing its own future. In Burkina Faso, that moment is now. Not through slogans, not through promises, but through action. Decisive, structural, and unapologetically people-centered. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, something extraordinary is unfolding. The creation of Africa's most affordable nation, built not on debt or dependency, but on sovereignty and social investment. For years, the cost of living crushed families. School fees pushed children out of classrooms, medical bills buried parents in debt. Housing costs kept young couples trapped in uncertainty. Farmers, the backbone of the nation, watched their labor benefit everyone except themselves. But that era is ending. Today we examine how free education, free basic health care, affordable housing, and an agricultural revolution are rewriting what it means to live and live well in Burkina Faso. Stay with us and subscribe to the channel as we uncover how a nation once dismissed is now setting an example for the continent. Agriculture in Burkina Faso has always been more than an occupation. It is identity, culture, and survival. Yet for decades, farmers faced obstacles they did not create. Unpredictable rains, lack of irrigation, expensive imports, and foreign entities that controlled the value of their harvests. Families worked tirelessly, only to watch their crops lose value while imported goods filled the markets. Poverty was not the result of laziness. It was the result of structures designed to keep the country dependent. Traoré broke that cycle. He initiated land redistribution programs, returning idle and foreign-controlled plots to farmers. Seeds, fertilizers, and essential tools were distributed directly to communities, not through layers of bureaucracy, but through targeted government support. Massive irrigation projects began to break the old tyranny of rain-dependent farming. For the first time in years, harvests were no longer held hostage by the sky. But perhaps the most transformative change came through local agro-processing. Instead of exporting raw crops and importing expensive finished goods, the government invested in community-owned mills, grain stores, and oil presses. These small factories kept value inside the country. A tomato grown in Bobo Dioulasso no longer had to travel abroad to return as canned paste. Local production meant local savings, and farmers finally tasted dignity in numbers. Food inflation dropping from 15% to 5%, maize flour prices stabilizing, vegetables becoming more accessible, poultry supply strengthening. Meals that once cost 1,000 CFA could now be purchased for half that amount. As food became more available and affordable, another major burden fell: the cost of education. For countless families, schooling was not a right, but a negotiation. Uniforms, books, exam fees, each year brought financial strain. Many students walked away not because they lacked ambition, but because their parents lacked resources. Traoré changed that reality. Under his leadership, primary and secondary education became fully free. Not partially subsidized, not conditionally discounted, free. Uniforms reached the poorest homes. Textbooks reached classrooms long neglected. School feeding programs expanded, ensuring children arrived ready to learn, not distracted by hunger. Attendance surged by 30% in 2 years. Girls, who often left school first when finances tightened, saw enrollment rise sharply. Literacy among young women increased, and households once terrified of school expenses now embraced education as a path rather than a punishment. Healthcare reforms mirrored this momentum. Prior to Traoré, a simple clinic visit could cost a week's income. A complicated birth could mean months of debt. Treatable illnesses turned deadly simply because families hesitated to seek help. The government's response was radical in its simplicity. Remove the price barrier. Primary health care became free. Maternal care became free. Medicines, vaccinations, and basic treatments no longer required negotiation at the door. To support this, the government funded clinics directly and built a national ambulance network, ensuring even rural villages could access emergency transport. Mobile health units reached areas once overlooked by the system. Maternal mortality began to fall. Vaccination coverage rose to 97%, and families suddenly found themselves choosing prevention instead of enduring suffering. In the cities, another crisis had been growing quietly: housing. For young couples, urban life often meant surviving under relentless rent hikes. In Ouagadougou, 400,000 CFA per month was common. Families lived in cramped rented rooms, forced to sacrifice dreams just to pay landlords. Traore's administration launched the Home for All initiative, a seismic shift in housing policy. Affordable units using local materials emerged across urban and peri-urban areas. Mortgages stretched across 15 to 20 years, with payments as low as 40,000 CFA per month, sometimes less than what families paid in rent. For many, it was the first time they held keys to their own home, not someone else's. These homes became more than shelter. They became anchors of confidence, spaces where families rebuilt dignity, where children studied at real desks, and where dreams no longer felt out of reach. Yet affordability does not happen through subsidies alone. It also requires plugging the leaks in the economy that drain household wealth. Burkina Faso had long depended on imports: rice, sugar, cooking oil, flour, despite possessing the capacity to produce much of this locally. Under the new government, rice imports dropped by 50% in just 1 year. Cotton gins and vegetable oil mills revived local production. Solar mini-grids and biogas reduced energy dependency. Local garages began adapting engines for biodiesel, cutting transport costs in rural areas. Every franc that once leaked abroad now circulated within communities. The impact became visible through stories like that of a woman in Dori, whose millet yields doubled thanks to irrigation support. She now owns a solar pump, her children attend free school, and she recently opened a small shop, an unthinkable dream just years prior. Or the family in Waiguya who moved from a slum into a government-subsidized home, reducing their rent burden by more than half. For them, affordability wasn't a statistic. It was the difference between survival and stability. National data began telling the same story. Food inflation down from 15% to 5%, overall inflation down from 10% to 4%, health expenses down by 60%, school expenses reduced to near zero. And most telling of all, 70% of citizens reported improved living conditions, the highest approval in decades. This is not accidental. It is the result of a philosophy that sees people not as burdens, but as builders. A government that invests in farmers, children, patients, and families does not lose money, it gains a stronger nation. Burkina Faso's model is spreading. Other nations are watching. Leaders are visiting. Analysts are asking whether this could be a blueprint for the continent. But the truth is simpler. The country is succeeding because it stopped asking outsiders to define success. It chose sovereignty not as a slogan, but as a budget line. It used its own resources to build its own systems for its own people. And now, with food abundant, education free, healthcare accessible, and housing within reach, Burkina Faso stands not only as Africa's most affordable nation, but as one of its most hopeful.